I think I'm going to start from the bottom line on Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, just to get because that's really where the issue starts. Tani Sada Shevir Shlish. Yeah. Okay. Tani Sada Shevir Shlish Livnei Goy, a field which grew a third in front of a Goy. Then a Jew acquired from him. Akiva says that which grows additionally after in the hands of the Jew is exempt because since the original initial third grew in the hands of a goy, it remains exempt forever. Chacham say proportionally, whatever grew in the hands of the Jew is chayiv in Trumas Ma'asros. Rabbi Avina Ve'ula Bar Yishmo Rabbi Elazar said, "Av Chachamim lo chivu atosefes elishavar." Even when Chachamim said that proportionally, you have to take off from whatever grew in your hands, in the hands of a Jew, it goes by the year in which it brought the third grew. In other words, what Ma'asros are given go by the year in which a third grew. Whereas if it grew a third in the second year, you give im mashim hoya sheni sheni. If it grew a third in the second year, then you give Ma'aser sheni ani. If it grew a third in the third year, then it goes give Ma'aser ani. Despite the fact that Yisrael only took it over later on, maybe even the subsequent year, nonetheless the year is fixed by when it grew to a third of its growth. Tani, learn. Rabbi Yonasan ben Yosi Omer Minay Latvu Shavia Shlish Livnei Rosh Hashanah. How do we know that grain which grew a third before Rosh Hashanah of the Shemitah year? In other words, before Rosh Hashanah, before Shemitah commenced, that you're allowed to collect it during Shemitah. So it's how we know it doesn't receive the Shemitah parameters because it grew a third before Shemitah. Because I'll tell you why. Talmud Lomer, because the pasuk says of Saftos Tvuasa, you should gather its grain. There's a word missing here in the quote in the Gemara. Uvashana Ashvis, and in the seventh year as well. In other words, there's some times where you can even collect the grain in the seventh year. And one of the kedusha of Shemitah. When's that? When it grew a third before Rosh Hashanah. So even though 2/3 of the growth are after Rosh Hashanah, and in Shemitah year it still doesn't have kedusha of Shemitah, so you can gather it as if it was not Shemitah. So that's what it means. You can gather also in the seventh year as if it didn't have kedusha of Shemitah. Rabbi Avina Ula Bar Yishmo B'Shem Rabbi Elazar both said, "As Rabbi Yonasan be Rabbi Yossi." This statement of Rabbi Yonasan and the son of Rabbi Yossi goes. B'Shitas Rabbi Akiva Rabbo goes in the opinion, or according to the lines of opinion of Akiva's Rebbe. Kamad Rabbi Akiva Mar Achashlish Mishonato Ma'alech. Just like Rabbi Akiva said, you go after the first third. Meaning, we said earlier this evening that if the first third grew in the hands of a guy, then it remains exempt forever, and there's no proportion afterwards, right? So to over here, vis-a-vis Shemitah, we're saying a similar thing. Cain, Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yosi, Omer, Achash Lisha Rishon Malchi. Go after the first third's growth. If the first third's growth is prior to Shemitah year, so there's no kedusha of Shemitah on this grain. Okay. Amar le Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Zira said. Oh, you don't have this, do you? You do have Rabbi Zira? Okay, I'm Rabbi Zira Lavina. Rabbi Zira said to Ravina, Tartin Milin Atun Amrin, you said two things. If you don't plead in the Hador, and they argue on each other. There's a paradox. Here you're saying, now here you, Vino pleading, I'm sorry. Hachatun Amrin. Yeah, Avchachamim lo chivu b'tosefes el shavar. That even Chachamim, who require the individual who bought the field from the goy after a third had grown, who require the grain proportionally to be tithe, they only mechayev el shavar. They only go after the previous year, meaning shemir sheni. That if it grew the third in a second year, you give the second year's type of meiser, which is meiser sheni. If it grew a third in the third year, you give the third year's type of meiser, which is meiser ani, which means you go after when it grows the third. That's one thing you said. V'achatun amrin. Yet here you say as Rabbi Yonasan Bar Yossi, B'shitas Rabbi Akiva Rabbo v'chulei. Yet here is saying that Rabbi Yonasan Bar Yossi only goes in the shita of Rabbi Yossi, in the shita of Rabbi Akiva's Rabbi. It's not true. Even Chachamim agree that you go by when it brings the shlish. Why you say it's only Rabbi Akiva? You yourselves, we know from previously that even Rabbanan also follow a third. It's that they only follow the third to the extent of determining to which year it's affiliated, not whether later on there's a proportional responsibility to take of Trumas and Maasros based on the proportion which grew in your possession. But what fixes the year and the status of the grain? The third. So that's even going like Rabban. It's not just like Rabbi Akiva. Why you say it's only Rabbi Akiva? Why'd you make such a statement? So this can even go like Chachamim. If you want to say Rabbi Yonasan Bar Yossi holds like Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe exclusively, then it concerns the following statement. Kamod Rabbi Akiva Amar, just like Akiva said, Isur Svichim, the prohibition on gathering. That which grows wild during Shemitah is Torah, is Mitoraisa. Ken Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yossi Omer, so to Rabbi Yonasan, the son of Rabbi Yossi says, Isur Svichim Torah, that the prohibition of gathering that which grows wild during Shemitah is a Doraisa prohibition. In that, he who follows Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva has a unique philosophy that this is a Doraisa in the other area, which is that we follow the third in determining the status of the grain. That can even going like Rabbanan. Okay? Further, via pachos mishlish livnei shvius. Along the lines of this statement, let's say that the stuff grew less than a third before Shemitah. V'nichnas hashvius, and the 7th year begins. Asura mishum svichim. Fascinating thing. You're not allowed to. There is a prohibition of that which grows during Shemitah on this, and you're not allowed to eat it, right? Because according to the prohibition of svichim means that which grows wild in a field which is normally planted is prohibited. Yet at the same time, it doesn't have the sanctity of the Shemitah year. Why is that? It was an amazing statement. Amazing thing. More made an amazing statement. The Kavanagh explains. The sanctity of Shemitah even devolves on animal fodder. Even on animal fodder. This grain is suitable to be animal fodder even before it grew a third of its growth. When did this become animal fodder? Still before Rosh Hashanah. When it become fit for human consumption? After Rosh Hashanah. So it's Kedusha Shvius, whether it has a sanctity of Shemitah and you have to do beer and all that kind of stuff on it, that's determined when it became animal fodder. Well, it became animal fodder before Shemitah began. So it doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah. Yeah, whether it's forbidden because it's tzvichim, because of wild growth in a field which is normally cultivated, that's determined by when it became suitable for human consumption. When it becomes suitable for human consumption? During the Shemitah year. So it doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah, but it does have the prohibition on human beings eating it. And the converse of that is, he explains, Shemikvar you asavim, already was grass, meaning animal fodder, before Shemitah begins, it never doesn't get the sanctity of the Shemitah year. Now, the converse of that is, it grew to less than a third before the onset of the 8th year. When the 8th year begins, there's no problem of svichim in that case. Why is there no problem of svichim? Because it grew to a third of its growth, which is when it's suitable for human beings during the 8th year. But since it became suitable for animals to eat during the 7th year, so it does have Kedusha Shvius. It does have the sanctity of the Shemitah year.
Does it matter on the intent of the farmer? He's growing it for animal fodder versus...
No, it seems not. It seems it's absolute, not subjective. Right. It seems it's absolute.
That's different than what we usually say.
What?
That's different than what we usually say. Usually we go by the intent.
Could be. But Kedusha Shvius being a Doraisa, that would only be by the Rabbanim. By the Doraisas would be absolute. Okay, they're usually the intents of the Rabbanas. So many of the things in Maasros and Trumas and all the there's Doraisa, so therefore that doesn't follow that. Okay, Itmar. Rabbi Yechon, we are on Chav Gimel and Beis. You don't have Itmar. I have Itmar. Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Yechon V'Shimon Lakish. I guarantee we'll start after 9:30. We didn't start early. 8. Okay.
Well, where we started from the beginning of it.
We started from Chok Gimel Amud Aleph at the bottom. Yeah. That's why I'm saying that. I backtracked a little, but we were a little further ahead. But right? You came after 9:30. He was here doing the crossword puzzle for 9:25. But okay, Itmar. You don't have Itmar again. Rabbi Yechon V'Shlokish L'Tarvai and Amrin. They both said Modeh L'Chol L'Akiva. This is going back to something which we said earlier this evening. That Chachamim do consider Rabbi Akiva B'Sidron Shoshanim, that in terms of the years, Sheima Yosheni Sheni Ani Ani. In other words, that you always go by the year in which the third grew, and not by the year in which the Jew takes possession, but rather when it reached the third. Rabbi Yechon said the bottom line is that Hefker, if a Jew takes hold of something after it had been Hefker when it reached a third of its growth, or Hektish, a Jew redeems a field if it had been Hektish at the time that it grew to a third of its growth, or Syria, a Jew acquires a field in Syria from a guy after it had grown a third of its growth. Machlokas Rabbi Akiva Chachamim. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. It's exempt forever. Chachamim says proportionally. Whenever you buy it, you have to take Trumas Ma'asros of whatever proportion of the growth occurs within your hands. In other words, if you buy when it's 3/8 grown, which is more than a third, then you have to take off how much Ma'aser from this proportionally? 5/8, exactly, and so on and so forth. Okay. Amr Shimon Lo, he said, Mod Rabbi Akiva Chachamim bechenet v'ashrosha. Rabbi Akiva concedes Chachamim in terms of trees which follow budding, that's called chanata, and in terms of rice and millet, which follow hashrasha, where they take root, which means that they go by meiser vis-a-vis when they budded by a tree, and when they took root by rice and millet. So now Rabbi Akiva says he could see the Chachamim. Let's say you bought the tree from the guy after Chanota, before it grew a third. After Chanota, after budded, before it grew a third. So according to Rabbi Akiva, we don't say. What Rabbi Akiva says, if you buy it after it grew a third, for sure you remain exempt. That was Rabbi Akiva. They can concede if you bought it after, before it grew a third, even though it's after Chanota, and Chanota budding determines the year of Meiser that it is, you're still chayiv. Okay? The only exception, you bought it after it grew to a third. And so too by the rice and millet. If you grew it after it took root, you bought it after it took root, nonetheless, you have to take off Trumas Ma'asros from it, proportionally again, because the only time the Jew who buys it or redeems it from Hektish or sees it from Hefker is exempt, even according to Rabbi Akiva, is if he took possession after it it grew to a third of its growth, not at one of the prior stages. Okay? Chav Dalet and Ralph at the top. Zora b'churva.
You can estimate a third growth of a bud of a tree.
No, of the fruit. Yeah, they knew. Well, what do we know? Yeah, what do you know? The Bronx they had trees. The drugs grow on trees in the Bronx, yeah. Okay? A tree grows in Brooklyn, the Bronx. No trees, right. So, Zara v'churva. If somebody planted in a churba, now this is amazing halacha. I had no idea this is true. Neither did you. None of you. Okay? Stuff which grows inside a house is exempt from Trumas Ma'asros. Yeah. So anything which grows in a hothouse is exempt from Trumas Ma'asros. Yeah. Even Eretz Yisrael, that's what it said. I don't mean Rapport, maybe it's chayiv, I don't know, but Midoraisa, it's all exempt.
So you have to bring it over to Kedusha.
Well, yeah, that's not why. But it's a good svara, right? I give A for creativity. But it's learned out from some pasuk. I don't know which pasuk it is. Hayotzi Asodeh. Yeah, he brings down from Dvarim Tesvav. Hayotzi Asodeh. It's got to be, grows out in the field. So it's amazing halacha. Zara b'chorbi grew in a ruin, it meaning no roof, right? Vevishlish grew a third out under the open sky. The sikei chagaba, and then he put a roof over it. Al daited Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, hatosefes chayev. Whatever grows now under the roof is chayev. Why? Because lamaisa, this is the converse of what we said before. According to Rabbi Akiva, the third grew out in the open. That's it. It's chayev for all time, right? Whatever continues to grow still becomes chayev. The point of chayev was reached in a chayev situation, now remains chayev, period. Al daited Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan though, hatosefes potter. If you grew 3/8 and then you covered it, and then you continue to grow, of how much of it you have to take off the Trumas Ma'asros in this case? The opposite. It grew 3/8 in the open, and then you covered it for the last 5/8. You only take off on the 3/8. That's right. Okay, the flip side of what we said before. Zara b'bayis. Now, what happens if you planted in a house, and then you took it off after it grew a third, right? In other words, it grew a third under the roof. Al daitin the Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, until 7 spots, that's it. At the third, it was exempt, remains exempt. Al daitin the Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, until 7 chayev. That which grew out in the open is chayev, and there the 5/8 would be chayev because it grew out in the open. Okay, amazing halacha. Avachala. Is that what you have next? Abachala came machlokas. It's a question. Abachala came machlokas. What about by chala? By kneading the dough and taking of chala, does that also have to do with is something which grew under a roof, exempt from chala? That's the Gemara's question. In other words, you grew your grain in a hothouse, and then you cook it home and you kneaded it. So is it exempt from chala or not? So Gemara has basically boozed this out of the box. Mad boy, Rabbi Akiva. Who are you asking from? For Rabbi Akiva? The Rabbi Akiva parents chutzar shenichlas ulaaretz chayov mechala. Rabbi Akiva never looks at the way it grows. He even says if you bought grain like they do nowadays in Israel, you bring grain from chutzar Eretz Yisrael, it's chayov mechala. So we see we don't look at how it grows at all. We just look at how it's kneaded together, right? Says more in the Yisbar Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Lezer Yosa Makshe. The truth is, we're Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Lezer. We haven't seen who holds that challah also is contingent on where it grows. So then Taki would ask a good question, but it's not a good question the way he asked it now. Therefore, I don't have to deal with it. Goodbye. Weiter. Rabbi Boom Barachia Ba Kun Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Boom Barachia asks for Rabbi Zira. Zara Batit Sheder Nokum. Similar idea. You plant it in a pot which was not pierced. So therefore, it's not a chayiv and Trumas Ma'asros. V'nikvo, and you only pierce it after it grew a third. Amar Leis, it said hachshav nikem. It only pierced now, right? It's exempt till now, so it's not chayiv. Rabbi Avin said. Furthermore, I said that Rabbi Gamliel b'shitas Rabbi Gamliel's keno. It's actually a new sugya. I should have made a stop. Rabbi Avin is a new statement. Period. Okay, a period before Rabbi Avin actually. Rabbi Avin. I said Shigamliel b'shitas Rabbi Gamliel's keno. Shigamliel was in our Mishnah. Shigamliel said that the only time you become chayiv Trumas Ma'asros is not only if you bought grain, but if you also bought the land on which the grain grows. Which does seems pashut, but I guess by them it's a chiddush. The only chayiv Trumas Ma'asros is the grain grows in your land, not just the grain grows wild. Right, that's what we're about to learn, exactly. Sharecropper on a goy's land is exempt.
Jewish land will be
Somebody's chayiv, yeah. Right. Probably the owner, right. The sharecropper takes off for him. Okay. We learned over there, this case, right? A Jew was a sharecropper for a goy in Syria. Rabbi Lezer, Mechayev Peiros Selim Haitzos, L'Shvius. Rabbi Lezer says, even though you don't own the land, since you're a sharecropper, you own the fruit, that's sufficient to be Mechayev you. Rabbi Gamliel, Poiter Gamliel exempts you because you don't own the land. Period. Rabbi Yomer V'chuli, do you have this header? No, we still have 5 words. Rabbi Yomer That's what Gamliel said. Rabbi said he go by proportion. He's going back on the ratio. In other words, that's just what Chachamim say, that it grew 3/8 or 5/8 in the hand of a Jew. So that's how you take on the Ma'aser. Rosha is the same as we say in Hebrew in Aramaic Resha. It's going back on the ratio of the Mishnah. Okay, we're up to the Mishnah, right? Hamatami. We already did one block tonight, right? Say it's two what? Say we say 2 block by Marv. Hamatami v'nosa mayim b'mida. Somebody who this is I don't know exactly how to translate this in English, but it's a process which appears throughout Shas. You take the dregs of the wine and you put water in them. So there are various different things which can happen. The water either gets the color of the dregs at a minimum, or the water actually gets the substance of the dregs, it becomes heavier flavor, or the water actually ferments and becomes an alcoholic beverage as a result. So any of these 3 things can happen, and we're going to discuss them now. Hamatami v'nosa mayim b'mida. Somebody who made this temet, and he put water in by measure, umatzu kidei midasa, and then he took out the same amount of water as he put in. The water which he poured in, the same amount came out, no more. Potter, it's exempt for taking off Ma'asros, because there's no substance in the water. It's not to be chayiv and trumas and Ma'asros, right? Rabbi Yehuda says the fact that it takes on the color is sufficient to give it the status of the wine, and therefore you have to take off trumas and Ma'asros on that temet.
Why would you expect them to have more water coming out?
Because some of the dregs get in, some of the substance.
So it occupies more space.
Sure. So you put in, say, 3 measures of water, you got up 4 measures, which means that a substantial portion of the dregs got into your water. So then, sorry, I skipped. Potter. No, I'm sorry, I skipped back. But basically, let's say again that case, you had 3 and you got 4. So which is a quarter on the outside, a third on the inside. So you have to give trumas and Ma'asros on that additional measure of 1 over what you put in from someplace else in order to take off Ma'asros, because it's considered to be mechayiv, because it's a bona fide addition to the water. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. I'm Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Avo said, Sometimes he said his name Rabbi Yosef. Sometimes he said his name Rabbi Yosef Bechina. V'hu, even when Rabbi Yosef says that if you get in exactly what he put in, get out exactly what he put in, v'shechmitz. The only time he said you take off Ma'asros, and that's now as if it also fermented. And not just the color changed, but also ferment occurred. Says the Gemara, today we learned over there, ha-temet achulo in the chmitz, temet, before it ferments. And because the Ma'aser can't be bought with Ma'aser sheni money in Yerushalmi. It's not a food, it's just water. If it falls to mikvah, even though it has the color of the grape dregs, it passes mikvah because it has status of water. Mishayichmitz, once it's fermented, nika because the Ma'aser can require Ma'aser sheni money because it's considered to be a food stuff. And it also does not make the mikvah possible because no longer status of drawn water has the status of a beverage of temet. Masnisa Rabbi Yehuda. The brisa must be like Rabbi Yehuda. Why it must be like Rabbi Yehuda? Because it sounds like as long as it's just fermented, that's sufficient. The Tninan we learned. And that's like we learned over here. If you made temet and you put in water by measure, and you took out exactly what you put in, Rabbi says you're chayiv, right? You Ma'asros. So they said name one of them, something the other one. As long as it fermented. So we see as long as it ferments, regardless of how much or how little in this case I should say, it altered the substance. As long as it alters the color and ferments, that's sufficient. So that's why it must be that even if all you did was get a different color and somewhat different fermentation, that's enough to buy with Ma'aser sheni money Yerushalayim. Rabbi Yisrael said, no, you can even go in like Rabbanan. The parameters of working with Ma'aser sheni money doesn't have to be so stringent like other things. And what's the proof of that pudding? Salt water is a valid acquisition for Ma'aser sheni money. It's also considered food stuff. The salt gets completely absorbed in the water, nonetheless it's considered to be a food stuff. That suffices. It's not plain Jane water. So to here, as long as the temet fermented, even Kurabona, I can use my sheni to buy money to buy it because it's no worse than salt water. By the way, for you, learn a very important thing: salt water is considered food stuff. So you want to make an erev tchumen and put food 2,000 amos in the city, you're allowed to use a little bit of salt water. Enough salt water for 2 meals. You know how much salt water you need for 2 meals? Not much. You stole my line. Thanks. Okay. Says more further.
What if the salt water falls in the mikveh? Is that considered shiur?
Yeah, because that's a different parameter. It's not the same thing like Meiser Sheni. There it's considered to be shiur. Says more further. Mal Motzi. Very interesting, and I truth this, I was not properly precise in teaching the Mishnah. Mal Motzi, from this Tamid, what do you take out Meisers? You only take out Meiser. Ha Truma lo, but not Truma. Why not? Because it's near, we learned Shatorim, the person, since Truma has no shiur, the guy took of Truma initially on the wine and the dregs, Belibo, he had in mind ala kitin. Kitin means the stuff which breaks out. Now which is on the side. Mashu tochet heaven, and wherever you have stuff which remains in the hay and grain. So that also he had in mind. Take truma off of the taylo. We learn concerning that vala zogin also on the grape skins. So the initial truma covers any subsequent product at any stage in the process, including the temed. Okay, going back to the Mishnah. Back to the Mishnah. 4th line down. Cholrei hanamolim, ant holes. Shalom b'tzareim, which are next. Not A-U-N-T. Ant holes. A-N-T. Ant holes. Ant holes. Shalom b'tzarei, which were next to a pile of grain. Now, the pile of grain is chayeves. Pile of grain, which is chayev in Meisers. He brings down scenarios where you made a pile and you intend to take it to the marketplace, so you can no longer snack on it, right? And so all the grain which is in the ant hole is also chayav, because we assume they took from the ant hole, right? It's clear they took from this all the entire night. Okay, that's where they got all the stuff in the ant hole. All right, let's go to the Gemara. Top of Chaf Ham and Alf. Okay, we'll see how it ties into our mission in a moment. I do miruach, I smooth out your pile without asking your permission. Okay? Rav Yochanan Martaf, nitbal, becomes tablet, no longer allowed to snack. Rish Lakish Mar lo nitbal. Rish Lakish is still allowed to snack. It's not devil. Now the Kavanoki says he didn't find anybody who explained this machlokas anywhere. He says that the machlokas is whether ein adam oser davar she'eino shelo applies here. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan says that which says ein adam oser davar she'eino shelo is I worshipped your cow, so I can't osir your cow, make it avodah zarah, because you don't want that to happen. But here anyway, he would have made me ruach tomorrow, right? So the fact that I made it a day earlier, it doesn't mean it's not a valid mi ruach. It's still a valid mi ruach. That's how he interprets this line. Okay. In Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, Reish Lakish holds, nonetheless, even though you might have done it tomorrow, today it didn't want to do it, so today I can't answer and I can't make miruach effective on your grain, only on my own grain, not on yours.
Didn't we have the in Bali? He did it from the ship.
That was his own stuff.
That was
his own. Yeah, not someone else's. Okay, Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. He changes the girsa here. Okay, you have in the Gemara it says Meisar Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. He has Meisar Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, Reish Lakish has Rabbi Yochanan. But then we learn Nashim Shenasnu Lanachtom Lasus Lem Sahar. Women gave their dough to a baker in order to ferment it. Right, Sahar means to make it sourdough. Im Ein Shalachas make a shiur P'tur Min Achala. If none of them gave him enough grain that was chayiv already in challah, so it continues to be exempt in a challah. So as the Gemara, ve'ein b'shel kulam b'kashir, once the baker brought them all together, that should be mechayiv, because that makes it all one big needed substance, right? And that should be enough to be mechayiv. So the Gemara is quite, but it's not. So Rish Lakish says, this is a raya to me. Why is it a raya to me? Because it's a raya that tevel can only be created with the intent of the owner. And here, since the women didn't intend, only the baker put it together, so then it can't become tevel. So that's why it's still exempt from challah. It's a riot to me. So says Gemara, no, Rabbi Yochanan said it's not a riot to you. Amarle say, no, it's not a riot for you. Shekena osa isa manas l'chalkol isos p'tur mina challah. Because anytime I make a dough with the intent to divide up into smaller batters, it remains exempt from challah. So too it remains exempt from challah, because eventually the baker's going to take them all apart again and redistribute them. That's why it remains exempt from challah, right? Amar Lei, so Rish Lakish continues to ask the question. You don't have Amar Lei, right? So he says, it says a baker who made sourdough to distribute is chayav in challah. So we see that that's not true. We see that even if it's made to break up again, it's still chayav in challah. He said, look, tziveni nachtom. Don't ask me a kasha from a baker. Nachtom, a baker, lo b'daito dovertoli. It's not that he tends to break it up. El b'daito kuchos dovertoli. Depends on what kind of customers he gets. In other words, he might break it up, he might not break it up, right? If he gets a large customer, he'll give the whole batch to that one customer. If he gets several customers, he'll give it to several customers. That's why, if he makes a large batch, it's taka chayev. Even if he has mind potential to divide up later on. It sits, right, he also would be willing to sell it to a large customer who came, so it becomes susceptible to challah immediately.
Also here, he started out with one big glob of dough. He didn't get it from...
Yeah, but we're still asking on technicality, because the other price it says that Esau, Medes L'chalik is exempt. It doesn't give any parameters, as long as it can be divided up. This is a chiddush that we give the various different parameters. Okay? Says more about Tanina. Now we get back to our sugya. Then we learn Chorei Agamalim, Shalonu B'tzara Rema HaChayeves. Then we learn, where is the stuff in the antol chayev when it was next to a pile, which is already chayev, harei l'chayovin. That refers habetzara reima petura peturin. But what happens if it was next to a pile which is exempt? What's a pile? It's a pile which is exempt where it was a yekmar malacha. So then, if the ants took it back to their hill, it remains exempt. How could this be? It's a kasha on Reish Lakish. Because according to Rabbi Yochanan, the ants should be able to make miruach. When they gather in their hole, that should be miruach. Now it says, the Kavanoki asks, what kind of miruach is that? There's no such miruach. And that means smoothing the pile. But the ants are smoothing piles here. So it says another kind of miruach. It brings them from the Rambam. That miruach, this is what your Rebbe taught you. Right, winnowing.
Well, we had it in Yerushalmi also.
Yeah, we had it in Yerushalmi also, but I remembered because you told us that your Rebbe taught it to you. So that's the other type of miruach, where you separate the grain from the chaff. And ants, they're smart critters. They ain't taking chaff. They're only taking the grain, and that's why they're actually being active miruach. So it's kash Rabbi Yochanan, let the miruach of the ants be valid miruach. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Avo, technically you're right. Why in that case not miruach? Because there, whatever's in the anthole, I give up hope of ever getting back. So therefore, it's like miruach of hefker. And miruach of hefker, taka, is exempt. It doesn't make it chayv and meiser. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel bar Abba said a different answer. Same idea though. It's about dumb ants. They took it in the chaff. So there was no miruach, right? Because they didn't winnow it. Okay? Mesiv, now let's change gears again. Mesiv Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lo Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish a kasha. But did we learn hekdeshon achlo nigmaron, if you're makdish grain before the miruach ugemar and gizbar, and then the gizbar, the treasure of hekdesh, did miruach v'achaka padon, and then redeem them piturin, it remains exempt for trumas and ma'asros. V'arei gizbar ke'acheru. No, the gizbar is like somebody else. It's not his grain. Yet you say that his miruach is val miruach, and therefore, in this case, the miruach exempts for all time, because the miruach was done by a gizbar. Why is the miruach of the gizbar effective? He doesn't own it. Says Mara Malay Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says it's different. Tipater command Amar gizbar kebailim. This is going opinion that a gizbar is when he has it is like an owner. Udlok Rabbi Yossi, now like Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi Omar gizbar who gizbar acher. Rabbi Yossi says a gizbar, the treasure package, is not like an owner. We see here that he is considered to be an owner. Okay, we'll stop here for Marv. If you guys can stay for time, I know we did already 2 blot, but if you can stay for a couple minutes after Marv, we'll hop around another blot. Okay, just 5-10 minutes. Right now we're on Chaf Hamid Beis. Beis Rabbi we just said Rabbi Chanina Chavrun the Rabbanon, which is at the 2 dots. You only have 1 dot. It's 3, 6, 8 lines down. Now this seems to be his title all over the place. Rabbi Chanina Chavrun the Rabbanon, the friend of the rabbis, because he already had earlier in the Masech the same title, Chavrun the Rabbanon. That was like his title. So Rabbi Chanina, the friend of the rabbis, asked the following question: Boy, v'afilu yesh b'shalachas man kashir. He asked there's a he changes the girsa from what you have. Wait a second. You have boy v'afilu yesh b'kulon kashir, right? Even if in all of them there's a shiur. But the Kavanah changes afilu yesh b'shal achas man kashir. Now, the question is going back to the women who all gave the dough into the baker. And it said there that if one of them has a shiur, then that one is chayiv and challah. So he's asking, even if one of them has shiur challah, why is it chayiv and challah? So, since she's going to have to re-knead it after it's fermented, because it hasn't yet even been fermented properly. So why is it really chayiv and challah? It sounds like the fermenting of the baker makes it irrevocably for that woman who had enough dough to be chayiv and challah. She's going to have to re-knead it anyway, right? It's going to have to be separate and re-kneaded. So why is it chayiv and challah already? Should remain exempt as if it wasn't finished. Dam Rabbi Yossi b'shem Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Yossi said name Rabbi Zira, and Rabbi Yonah Rabbi Zira both said b'shem Rabbi Lazar. Af ma'asher login lo nitbam neshu osi lach zero. Lo davar shlo nigim ramalachto. This is how we had earlier in the Masechta. If you scooped up a ladle full of wine from your bar, you're allowed to snack on it, and it doesn't become kavur because you can always put it back. Right? So too here, as long as they don't add hot water, we went back there. So too here, it's going to go back, and when it goes, we're going to go back to her, and it's not, and she hasn't yet finished working with it. So it shouldn't be chayiv in challah, even once it's fermented. More doesn't answer the question. Let's go back to the Mishnah, to the next sugya. Okay? Back to the Mishnah on Chav Daled on the base, the 5th line down. Shum Baal Bechi. In the right place, Mrs. Zuger? Yeah. Back to the Mishnah, right? You there? Okay. Shum Baal Bechi, the garlic of Baal Bechi, or butzel and the onion sharachba of rachba. These are places. Or grease now kilkilin, beans from Kilkilia, vadoshim mitzrios and Egyptian lentils. Right? They're all exempt from trumas. We assume they're exempt from trumas and ma'asos because they came from chutz laaretz. They don't normally grow in Israel. Remer afakirkas, so another type of vegetable. Rabbi Yossi remer afakutnim, another type of vegetable, because we assume they grow in hefker, so therefore they're exempt. They're all exempt to Yerushalmi Ma'asros because we assume they grew either chutz laaretz or hefker. But nikachim kohen mishvis, you can buy it from anybody in Shemitah because we assume they're not Shemitah fruit. Zera luf ha'elyon, the seed of the luf plant, v'zera krishin, and the seed of the leek plant. V'zer b'tzoim, the seeds of onions. Zer lefes, the seeds of turnips, and snonos, and radishes. V'shar again, and any other type of garden vegetable seed. Shein elchaim, which are not eaten, they're not edible. P'turim min ha'maiser, they're exempt from meiser. Nikolim miklam shvis, and therefore you're allowed to buy it from anybody shmita. Because v'afa b'shavi and truma, even though they came from a fruit which was originally truma, nonetheless, harei liyochel, they can eat because these themselves are not seeds which have to do with truma. Okay? Let's go back to the Gemara. Tanya. Ezu shum ba'albechi. What is the onion of ba'albechi? What does it look like? Kosher ein lo l'dor echad maki v'samud. Only has one row around a middle axis. Don't ask me exactly what this means, but somehow it has a special shape to it. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, kosher ein lo klipa achas, any garlic which only has a single husk. Ezu bato sharikwa, what's a rikba onion? Kosher okto nimshach, anyone which has a long stem. Anyone whose stem bends into itself. Any onion which doesn't have a sharpness, like a Spanish onion, right? Doesn't have a sharpness to it. What are beans are kilkulin? These are square beans. Now here we go into a tangent. I forgot. I wanted to look up some sort of guy. I really didn't get a chance. I'm sorry. There's nothing in creation which is four-sided. Nothing in creation is four-sided. Nothing was created four-sided. I wanted to look at it to see what the significance of that is. There are three-sided things, five-sided things, no four-sided thing, no squares. No squares or rectangles. Okay? That's what it says. Hoser Rabrechi said, how can you say this? But to Tani, we learn Gufa Shel Braheres, the way the affliction looks in Saras is Kegris HaKilkili Meruba, like a square kilkili bean. On Rabbi said, listen to what he did. It's not a question. Kol Garma, the entire essence of this matter, a Garma in Hebrew is Etzem. So it's like Etzem Adavar, the essence of this matter. Amr Leisim Ruba teaches that the bean is not square. Lamatin Tnina the Arbanohu. It says the Baharis is like a square kilkili bean. So it sounds like kilkili beans aren't square. This one you happen to square off. Right? You make a square around it. Ask Marva Nana, mint is square. A mint leaf. It's not, right? Mora says it's not. It says Mole Kutrin. It's full of little knots in it. It's where the I guess where it's not square. Va'aniva de pila, another type of bean which looks square. It says Maragol milamatan has a round side. These the boy lememar. There are those, however, want to say Lo Amar Shingamliel ben Gamliel el bebrios. Shingamliel didn't mean there aren't plants which are four-sided, but rather that there are no animals which are four-sided. I don't know what a four-sided animal is, but there are no four-sided animals. I don't know. So it's a good time for a Far Side cartoon. I don't know exactly what it is, but that's what it says here. Okay, Tanya, we learned Eluin Adosha Mitzirus, what are Egyptian lentils? Kosher Galein Chadin, the ones which have sharp lips. Gal is literally a round, no it's smooth, this one's sharp. Rabbi Shigam Liamer Kosher Nimrod throws ones which don't grow with pebbles. In other words, they grow very clean.
So all these things are...
All these are chutzlars.
Well, I understand, but the way they describe them, though, they describe them as these are characteristics of it rather than it comes from a particular place.
Right. These are characteristics, but this is how you know they came from that place. It has to be that way. Elo and a kirkos, what's a kirkos kosher, same muatim, one which have few stems, valkatem rubin, and many seed pods. Ma damile, what's similar to it, Rabbi Yosef said, Kigon uling, kunaitza, another type of bean which is similar, kunaitza, have a good night.